Hey, all right, let's get started. So welcome everybody. My name is Marla and I am on the TEDx YYC committee in Calgary, and I am your moderator for the day. So I'm just going to do a quick intro and then I'm going to hand it over to Autumn and let her have the floor. But welcome. So welcome Autumn Eaglespeaker. She is your activation host for the day, and she's going to be talking on resilience, healing, and renewal. So I'm not going to talk too much more about it. I'm going to let her take over because I cannot wait to hear all of the things that she has to say. So thank you so much, Autumn, and take it away.
Hi, everybody. And thank you, Marla, for that introduction. And welcome, everybody, to Resilience, Healing, and Renewal. I can't remember the rest of my title. I just kind of made it up to go along with the presentation, but I hope you will enjoy. I will just want to start with letting you know that because of the recent events that have transpired in the last 24 hours, it's really taken an effect on me and the way that I wanted to present today. And I will still be speaking about my generational experience, of course, but I think that to not speak about the residential school experience would be disrespectful to the many survivors and to the many children that never made it home. In our Blackfoot culture, we often start things, we always start with a song and the end of the song. And so at this time, I'm going to start with the song. I'm going to sing two starts of the Strong Woman song. I will say that I'm nervous and I'm really affected. I'm triggered today. I'm very sad. And I think that we as a people, as Indigenous people and as Canadians, there's a collective mourning that is taking place. But for Indigenous people, our experience is much deeper, and just the uncovering of a single experience. There's more to come. And that's the thing, is that these experiences are going to keep occurring, and we just have to be resilient and move forward in a good way that's good for everyone. So I'm going to now sing the Strong Woman song. If you bear with me just a second, please. I am also lighting smudge in the background, and so you may see smoke on the screen, and I'm doing that as a way for protection for myself and for the many others. Please bear with me, I may cry. I'm having a day. So my name is Autumn, and I am a first generation out of residential school. That means that my mother attended residential school and her parents before her and their parents before them. I come from 4 generations in my family that have experienced and overcome and survived residential school. This idea of schooling was meant to assimilate the child. It was to kill the Indian and to raise the child. And this whole system that was calculated by the government was an act of genocide. Just yesterday in Kawasis, Saskatchewan, it was known that unmarked graves were unearthed. And in total, there were 761. That means that if you add that to the other numbers that have happened in the last 3 weeks, that's only 6 schools out of the 139 residential schools in Canada. 215 in Kamloops, British Columbia, 104 in Brandon, Manitoba, 33 in Regina, Saskatchewan, 35 in Lestock, Saskatchewan, and 180 at Carlisle, Pennsylvania school. You know, see, for us, there is no boundary. It is all one North America, Canada, and the US. And the same institutions of educational governance and assimilation policies were put into practice on both sides of the medicine line. So there are, by the records for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 4,100 documented deaths. But so in the last 3 weeks now, there have been 1,333 children whose graves have been found. The residential schools have been in operation for longer than the history of Canada. That means that they've been in operating for 165 years. Canadian history is only 154 years. Treaty 7 was signed in 1877, and this lay the Blackfoot Treaty. It was signed with the Stoney people and the Tsuut'ina people, and it laid the way for Canada to become the foundation of what it is Canada, for the railway to be laid across. I wanted to ask for a moment of silence on behalf of the residential school survivors and those that never made it home, and to honor them for 133 seconds would actually be longer than my allotted time today to speak. It would be 22 and a half minutes. And that's just this past few weeks. It's something that our people, that our families have been saying, have been crying out now, and it's been known through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and through the other commissions that there have been mass graves, unmarked graves at the residential schools across Canada. And so the idea that this is new is ridiculous. It has been known by the government. It has been an act that has been calculated and carried out. So I want to talk about Blackfoot families. Blackfoot families are resilient people. The Blackfoot culture in itself is the last full intact culture for First Nations people with our spirituality, our language, and our ties to land. And we have strong kinship ties and strong relationship through community and family, through spirituality at its foundation. And Maslow actually developed his hierarchy of needs based on the Blackfoot culture after he came here and stayed with the people. But he got it wrong. Instead of placing the self at the epicenter, it was actually the opposite, the upside down triangle, where the self is at the bottom and your family and your community are above you and your higher needs, village and around you. It was this way, this foundation, that I was raised, that my family, my mother, my aunties and my uncles were raised by my grandparents and my great-grandparents before them. And although they went to these residential schools, they survived. They survived and they created resilient generations of people. My great-grandma, Katie and Julia, my grandmother, Leona, my mother, Diane, myself, and my children are second-generation out survivors. And I'm doing my best to raise them with love and kindness and the same foundations that my grandmother and my mother instilled in me. I will also say that the experience in itself was torturous. There were so many things that happened to the children. But one of the things that stood out that my auntie was speaking to me about this morning was about the hunger and about how children were always hungry, that they were malnourished, and that there was never enough food, and that the older children would often steal from the kitchen to feed the younger children anything that they could, including apples or scraps of bread. And one of the things that stands out is that the last residential school closed in 1996. That's really not that long ago. I graduated high school in 1996. I graduated here in Calgary at the Plains Indians Cultural Survival School, which was a high school for Indigenous youth, which has now been closed. Many children, when they returned home from residential school, faced really broken homes. There was oftentimes alcoholism, violence, sexual violence, and all of these things were learned behaviors from the residential schools. And all of these systems further led to large incarceration rates of our people. Over 50% of the population in prison currently are Indigenous people, yet we make up only 6% of the Canadian population. And the foster care system in Canada is atrocious. There are currently more kids in the system today than were ever in the residential schools. So the displacement of the families continues. Through the schools, the children were forced to hate themselves. They were forced to hate their brown skin, their brown eyes, their hair was cut off. They were forced to hate themselves as Indian people. But through it all, as I stated before, my family was resilient. And they looked after each other, they took care of each other. My grandma did that, my mother does that. My grandmother always had love for everyone and took in those that needed care when their parents weren't able to care for them. She raised many of my mom's cousins. And it was this resilience and strength that taught all of my family to become the people that we are today, to thrive and to survive within the urban setting, and to be resilient against any challenges that come up against us. I guess in this way, I'm still going through the battles of intergenerational trauma. I still have my struggles. I have my own trials, and I could only imagine what other survivors are going through, generations of survivors, and what they need to get through. on a daily basis. And I'm coming close to my end of my time, but I wanted to say, how do we heal from all of this? How do we heal? Well, it starts with decolonization. It starts with accepting the real history of Canada. And if that means that the real history becomes accepted because of these mass graves, these unearthed, these unmarked graves, then so be it. Because it's been palatable for generations for Canadians. But now it's not. It's not. And I really hope that there is discomfort that you are feeling because of this issue has hit you so close to home. And what you can do about that is to help the Native people. And that includes removing legislation that impedes them from their own successes, honoring the treaties, implementing the 92 calls of action. Stop taking Native kids to court. Call out your churches. Be an active ally. In your workspace, in your everyday, in your volunteerism, make space for Indigenous voices. Donate your time and money and to support Indigenous causes. Demand that real history be taught in our educational systems. Just yesterday, the Kenny government curriculum writer was spouting off about how great the legacy of residential schools really was. That is wrong, and that's not the history we need to be taught. If there's going to be healing, it has to be real healing. It has to be real action. It has to be with implementing all of the 92 calls of action and not just making empty apologies. It means real action. And it means calling out the untruths that we and others state. And even the untruths that we ourselves state about ourselves. I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today about the experiences that my family and I have gone through so that you can have a little bit of an understanding that at the end of the day, it's not just something that can be easily gotten over and that we're on a true path to healing. It takes decolonizing and giving First Nations people, Indigenous people, Métis and Inuit people that ability to be sovereign and to choose for themselves what kind of healing and what that looks like. But that also means funding those processes and ensuring that there's adequate funding available to support the people. Ikakimat, Tikakumen, end with the song. Thank you, everybody.
Hello, Autumn. Thank you so much for that today. That was heartbreaking. Thank you for being so vulnerable today. Thank you for the statistics. It really is, it really emphasizes the impacts that have happened over the last 165 years. It really emphasizes the heaviness and the unimaginable impact that residential schools caused. And I know it's a hard day, and so we appreciate your time so much today. And like you said, we can only hope that this finally causes change. So that's my hope, that that this finally brings about the change that we need to change. That's the way it is. So thank you very much. Anybody that has joined us today, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them out there if you have questions for Autumn. And otherwise, we would like to thank you so much, Autumn. There's a lot of thanks in the chat. Thanks to you for speaking and for singing and for being vulnerable and strong and speaking from your heart. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Okay, so I think that wraps up our session today. And once again, we are so thankful to have you here. And that's where we end it. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And your next session on stage starts in 10 minutes, I believe. So go and grab a snack and head to the bathroom, and then we'll get back to some other amazing things to end our day. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Autumn.